Well, hello class. We're going to get started today in Chapter 1. And Chapter 1 is just an introduction to algebra. So a lot of what we're going to look at over the next couple days should be pretty familiar to us because of what we learned last year in pre-algebra. So let's go ahead and get started. If you notice, I start out with a question. My question at the top of the slide says, what is a variable? Who remembers what is a variable? What's our definition? Yeah, that's right. A variable is a symbol, such as a letter X, used to represent one or more numbers. So a variable is a letter, okay, that represents a number. Now, in algebra, we're always solving for the elusive x. We're trying to figure out what does x equal. But it doesn't have to be x. We've learned that, let's say we were doing a story problem and we were trying to solve for time. Well, we could actually use t. We could say t equals the time. If we were solving for the length, then we may want to say L is the length. So it doesn't have to be x. Okay, we're actually going to talk about let statements a little further in, and let statements are important because they define the variable for me. But typically, a variable is just a letter that represents a number. Now, if you notice my next two equations there, we have two different kinds of expressions. We have a variable expression, and it contains a variable. It contains a letter. All right, and then the second type, okay, this is type number 1, a variable expression which contains a variable or a letter, or we could have numerical expressions, and numerical expressions contain a number. Okay, so we've got to be able to go through and practice these expressions, okay? These expressions. So if you look at your book, we're on page 2. And if you look there, if we look at example 1, it looks like this. And Mrs. Burton's going to write them over here to the side. So if we look at example 1, it looks like this. We have 42 divided by 6 plus 8. Now, would we call this a variable expression or a numerical expression? That's right. This is a numerical expression. There's no variables in there. Now, before we get started, I should go down here and look at some reminders. Okay? Remember, if it says they want the sum, well, we know sum is addition, the difference is subtraction, product is multiplication, and quotient is division. The other thing that's real important before we get started is whenever we see a parentheses says, hey, do me first. Okay? So if we go back over here to the problem that Mrs. Burton wrote down, what should we do first? Yeah, what's in the parentheses? So if I look at that, well, we know in the parentheses, that's what we've got to do first. So 42 divided by 6 is 7. And then we know that 7 plus 8 equals 15. Okay? So that is a numerical expression. All right? Again, let's look at their letter B. If we look at their letter B, let's go ahead and write it up here so you can see it. All right, it says 54 divided by 8 minus 2. Once again, it is a numerical expression. What do we do first? Yeah, as soon as you see those parentheses, hey, do me first. So 8 minus 2 is 6, and then 54 divided by 6, everybody says is 9. Great job. Now, let's see what happens if they give me a variable expression. Okay, so for a variable expression, we're going to look at example number 2. Again, we're on page 2 in your book. And so what we're going to do is we're going to replace the variable with the number that it represents. We call that evaluating the expression. So if you look at example 2, Okay, they're telling me that A equals 5, and they want me to evaluate the expression 7A. Well, the first thing I have to do is I have to substitute the value for A in my equation. So we're going to have 7 times 5, and then everybody knows that 7 times 5 is 35. Did you realize there was no parentheses that time? So we didn't have to worry about doing that first, and so we just multiply. Now, let's look at a different one. Let's go ahead and keep that A equals 5. Mrs. Burton tried to get through there, but I didn't. Okay, so let's say that A equals 5 still, and let's change our equation. This time, let's make it 3A plus 2. Now again, they want me to evaluate. So before I can evaluate, I have to substitute that 5 in for A. So we're going to say 3 times 5. Ooh, that's inside the parentheses now, plus 2. That's right, parentheses first. So 3 times 5 is 15 plus 2. Okay, final answer, it equals 17. Okay, so pretty much that's what we're doing today. Okay, that's what we're doing today. We're deciding whether they are numerical expressions and variable expressions, and then we're just going to do the math. And remember, whenever you see those parentheses, parentheses means, hey, 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 do me first. And then we continue on with the math. So let's go ahead and practice some more in your book.